Hi everyone, I'm John Rennie and thanks for joining me here in the Boneyard. I've been on a bit of an action kick lately, and of course, eventually watching action movies, you're going to end up watching the masterworks of who I consider to be one of the greatest and most original directors of 1970s and 1980s Hollywood. So please join me this episode as we review director Walter Hill's blood-soaked neo-western, Extreme Prejudice. Released in 1987, Extreme Prejudice is a movie that I feel always gets overlooked in discussions of Hill's work, yet it bears all the trademarks of his cinematic style of dramatic action-fueled filmmaking, mixed with his deep admiration for the classic Western and classic hard-boiled storytelling. This movie is gritty in its desert, sun, blood and sweat-soaked sensibility, and of course has Hill's flair for no-nonsense, expert direction. Jack! Every move that Hill makes in his direction is for a reason. Every frame tells us something about character, situation, or drives the story forward. Extreme Prejudice is another classic from Hill that showcases his remarkable ability to blend intense action with character-driven story.
Give me your gun, man. I don't give up my gun without somebody getting hurt.
The movie also projects Hill's trademark genre mashup style, and as with a lot of his work, he delivers on the violence.
Everybody back off, this is between him and me.
But also directs moments of dramatic action. Hill pauses amidst the shootouts for moments of intense performance.
Where is old Sally now?
She's up in Salt Springs teaching 3rd grade.
Oh, hell. Well, we all move on, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
And it is in these moments that we see Hill's magic touch. He makes us care about our heroes before he puts them through the ringer. Expert storytelling.
Why don't you tell me what's wrong?
A fella pulled down on me in the Rincon Norte last night. He's dead.
From the moment the film begins, Hill's signature style is unmistakable. We have his sharp dialogue.
How much help you got outside, Jack? How much help you think I need, TC?
An economy of storytelling and brutal, beautifully choreographed shootouts that feel like poetry in motion.
I said it ain't right.
Walter Hill's Extreme Prejudice is a bullet-riddled thrill ride, and he crafts a movie steeped in violence, honor, and betrayal. Classic themes of the American Western genre.
Well. There he is. Y'all be careful now. He's a snake, that old boy.
Throughout his career, Hill has made no secret of the filmmakers he admires the most, and has said he is heavily inspired by the works of Howard Hawks and Akira Kurosawa. And we can see Kurosawa's influence in Hill's slow-motion action and editing techniques in Extreme Prejudice. Most film scholars agree that Hill's work is influenced by the westerns of the great filmmaker Sam Peckinpah. And indeed, Hill did work with Peckinpah when he wrote the screenplay for The Getaway in 1972.
Right there.
But these days, and this is not to get down on Peckinpah, he's one of my heroes too, but after years of watching both filmmakers, I feel The Getaway is a lot more of a Walter Hill story than a Peckinpah movie. The movie obviously has marks of Peckinpah's fantastic direction, but it has the characters and feel of a Hill Western, where we have two people at odds with each other who make a run for the Mexican border and freedom. A Hill story, if ever I read one. Most academics or fan theorists would point to the shootout at the end of Extreme Prejudice, because at first glance, it seems to be a homage to Peckinpah's 1960s classic Western The Wild Bunch, where our ragtag group of military misfits go out in a blaze of glory, very similar to the story of Extreme Prejudice. But while researching this review, I was lucky enough to find an interview with Walter Hill where he talks about this misconception that he is overtly influenced by Peckinpah. I have to admit, up until seeing this interview, I was convinced Hill was influenced more so by Peckinpah.
I ran into Peckinpah a lot over the years. I had done The Long Riders, which used quite a bit of slow motion. We had this phone conversation, and he said a lot of people are comparing slow motion in Long Riders and Wild Bunch. I said, yeah, and he said, they're wrong, aren't they? And I said, yeah, I think so. He said, why are they wrong? And I said, well, the use of slow motion in the Wild Bunch extends reality and makes things more real. And the Long Riders is the opposite. It's nightmare. It's a more traditional use of slow motion to bring upon the feeling of experiencing the nightmare. And he said, that's right, Doctor. Peckinpah's use of extending the moment and making a kind of heightened reality, which he got from Kurosawa. He understood that that Kurosawa's kind of discovery of extending reality and exploding reality could be taken to a much greater degree than Kurosawa had used it, and so he took it to a much greater place, extended it.
I really feel I know something new about filmmaking techniques now after listening to Hill's words. So I thought this was a really cool interview, and I just had to share that clip. I guess you learn something new every day.
Funny, ain't it? How it comes around. Right way's the hardest. Wrong way's the easiest. Rule of nature.
Although influenced by Kurosawa, Extreme Prejudice's roots run deep into the American mythos, and its story has its feet firmly planted in the iconography of the lone desert landscape hero. And this comes from the written word of the original story by writer no other than John Milius. Mostly known for his work on Big Wednesday, Apocalypse Now, and Conan the Barbarian, Milius's fingerprints are all over Extreme Prejudice, from its themes of honor and betrayal to its hyper-masculine, almost operatic tone, with its wonderfully choreographed gun battles and story of torn friendships over love and life choices.
You can buy me cash, hell, you always could. But you can't buy the badge, one without the other ain't no goddamn good.
Milius himself would go on to direct the star of Extreme Prejudice, Nick Nolte, in his overlooked jungle adventure, Farewell to the King, just 2 years later. So I guess Nolte made a big impression on Milius throughout filming. Extreme Prejudice has many parallels that make it a very Milius story, just as Colonel Kurtz heads upriver to become a god in Apocalypse Now, as does Texan Cash Bailey in Extreme Prejudice, when he heads over the Texas border into Mexico and builds himself an army that profit from violence and drug dealing.
You ain't leaving me no alternative but to settle our differences, ain't that right, amigo?
Powers Booth's performance as Cash is enigmatic as it is villainous. Booth is always a joy to watch, and also appeared in Hill's Weekend Warrior War Games Gone Wrong classic, Southern Comfort, which is well worth checking out if you've yet to see it. Extreme Prejudice also echoes Milius's fascination with war and masculinity that appears in all of his works, such as the desert epic The Wind and the Lion, which stars Sean Connery as an anti-hero fighting the imperial government in 1904 Morocco, one man and his ideals against an entire army, just like Nolte, a man and his ideals going up against an army of bandits in Extreme Prejudice.
When the shooting starts, keep your goddamn head down. Go for yourself, Ranger.
To briefly summarize the story of the film before we go any further, there are two plot points running parallel with each other until eventually they run into a blaze of artillery. One story follows Texas Ranger Jack Benteen, a tough and principled lawman trying to uphold justice along the Texas-Mexico border.
Tell him I'm gonna bust his ass for selling dope if he doesn't do what I want.
His former childhood friend, Cash Bailey, has become a ruthless drug kingpin operating out of Mexico. To make things worse, Bentine and Cash share the love of the same woman, and their friendship is put to the ultimate test.
What I can't figure out is how come we can't be friends no more, Jack? Boy, I'm serious now, I am.
As Bentine struggles to bring down the vicious drug ring, a covert military unit, known as the Zombie Unit, arrives in town, led by Major Paul Hackett.
Everything okay, Sergeant?
No problem, just sort of things
And the unit's true mission remains mysterious, but all will be revealed as we head into a bloody Mexican showdown. The film's complex blend of a modern-day western with espionage and covert military elements also feels right in line with Milius's cinematic worldview.
Termination with extreme prejudice. Excepting members of this immediate family, there are no friendlies.
Where men of action live by a strict code in an ever-changing, morally ambiguous world. And in Extreme Prejudice, these codes of honor eventually culminate in friends turning on one another and double crosses that'll make your head spin. The name of the film itself even makes an appearance in Milius' script for Apocalypse Now in the opening scenes.
Terminate. The Colonel. Terminate with extreme prejudice.
This gives us yet another connection to the excellent work and world of filmmaker John Milius, who is a huge character himself, and I'm a massive fan of his work. There will certainly be more to come on his work here in the Boneyard, so watch this space. Back to Extreme Prejudice. One of the things that Hill often gets right is ensemble casting. Think of his marvelous work in The Warriors, The Long Riders, and Streets of Fire. Hill is fantastic at putting ragtag groups of characters together to play off one another. And the same is here in Extreme Prejudice.
Absolutely imperative that this job look like a civilian operation. Op order number 1, and nobody break it.
The film boasts a powerhouse lineup that includes Powers Booth, Rip Torn, Michael Ironside, Maria Conchita Alonso, Clancy Brown, and the excellent William Forsythe, who I've come to consider one of my favorite actors over the years.
You're lucky you got friends.
You're right about that. In this world, that's one damn thing you need is friends.
His work in Paul Schrader's Patty Hearst, for example, is second to none. Another movie that is well worth checking out. The whole cast delivers strong, scene-stealing performances as they bounce off one another. The dynamics work beautifully.
You know me, Cash. I keep the conversation simple.
But the true heart of the film is, of course, the star, Nick Nolte, who was at the peak of his game in the late 1970s and throughout the 1980s. I recently watched Carol Reiser's Who'll Stop the Rain, in which Nolte stars as an ex-Vietnam veteran, and that is also a masterwork. More to come on that movie soon on the Boneyard too. Nolte's portrayal of Texas Ranger Jack Bentine in Extreme Prejudice is brooding, nuanced, masculine, and I would say somber, and it is a fantastic performance. He plays a man of few words but immense presence.
You want to tell me about it?
Sarita, I don't want to talk about this. I can't talk about it. I gotta do something about it.
Nolte was also known for his commitment to realism at the time, and his dedication to portraying the life of a Texas Ranger lends the film an extra layer of authenticity.
I ran into a man named Joaquin Jackson, who is a Texas Ranger. Made contact with him, and then he and I spent a lot of time in general discussion about the film, and it's basically through him that I found the truth of the character.
He was awfully worried. I had kind of jammed him pretty good when I cast Powers and Rip Torn, so he was surrounded by two Texans, so he was awfully worried that he was up against the real thing. Emotionally, Nick really understands the sensibility and the tradition of the Texas Rangers.
Nolte had previously collaborated with Walter Hill on 48 Hours before he was cast as the stoic Texas Ranger Jack Bentine. Hill envisioned Bentine as a character reminiscent of classic Western heroes and encouraged Nolte to study famous Westerns like Gary Cooper movies, and Gary Cooper's performances, for example, to capture his stoic essence. And Nolte's rugged demeanor, steely gaze, and imposing physicality give him the classic Western hero silhouette, perfectly suited to Hill's modern Western vision. And with his uniform buttoned all the way up to the neck, and his crisp appearance representing a whole legendary profession in law enforcement, Nolte delivers an enigmatic performance.
God damn it, Cash, give it up! I'll take you home now, just give it up!
I've covered Hill's work before here on the Boneyard, looking at his gangland action Odyssey of the Warriors in 48 Hours. And one of the things I love most about Hill is his seamless blending of genres to build awesome, tensions-filled, but also dark worlds. And Extreme Prejudice is the same. As I said, the film at heart is a modern Western, but it's mixed with espionage and CIA intrigue, and I think what Hill does by mashing these genres together is create genre hybrids that feel fresh, but most of all feel unpredictable. And that is what I love about his work. You never know which way his films are going to go because of these mixed genre elements, and to me, as an action fan, having seen hundreds, maybe even thousands of predictable westerns and action movies over the years, Hill's unpredictability is really exciting because you never know who's going to win or lose or what might happen next. And I think this is why Hill chose to mash genres the way that he does. It's classic storytelling and direction, but these off-kilter elements keep us off guard, making for an exciting film-going performance. In Extreme Prejudice, the idea of a covert government operation running parallel to a classic Western love triangle revenge story might sound confusing at first, but it adds an extra dimension of tension and complexity, which makes the film stand out among other, simpler genre movies. It's this fusion of genres that allows Extreme Prejudice to feel both nostalgic for the Western, but also innovative for modern times and modern audiences.
Morning!
What's good about it?
Oh, hell, I said morning. I didn't say good morning.
When you say action-adventure, you think of car chases and explosions and killings and all that, which is not to say that we don't have plenty of action, but it all comes from character rather than just being in and of itself, and I think that's really the great thing we have going for us.
Hill sure knew what he was doing, and that's why I'll always consider him as one of the great directors, because he understands what came before him and he builds upon it, but he also knows what he likes, and he uses this to build these violent worlds, but his characters are always complex enough that we feel a connection with them and their stories. And the love triangle in the movie between Benteen, Cash, and the woman they both love, Sarita, played with a fiery depth by the fantastic Maria Conchita Alonso, who I also love in Colors, just adds spice to the mix, and I can't imagine anyone else in the part of Sarita.
You gringos never learn. You beat up one of us, word gets around quick.
Alonso is perfectly cast. There is something deep in her eyes that adds an incredible depth to the character. She's pretty much brilliant in everything she does.
Someday you're gonna want me, Jack. You don't know a good thing when you got it.
Hill is a master storyteller. And here, his unique style results in a film that operates both as a classic cowboy story of justice, but it is also a high-stakes spy game filled with double crosses and government conspiracies. What more could an action fan ask for?
We used to read about things every day in the paper that were no more far-fetched than this movie that were going on in the drug wars.
It's a story of right or wrong, especially presented in American society today where it's extremely difficult to draw those lines, simply because of the complexity of the people, the complexity of the time.
The action sequences, including bank robberies, shootouts, and barroom standoffs, are all shot with Hill's trademark clarity and precision. They explode with sound and energy, while maintaining an almost poetic brutality. You can clearly see Hill's influences in the movie, but at the same time, he has his own style. He infuses with his passion for cinema to create a movie that has the iconography of the Old West, but has the firepower of the modern world. If you're an action fan, this movie is quite incredible to watch. The cinematography, set design, and editing are all perfect. No complaints there whatsoever. It's a beautifully crafted movie by the crew.
They've seen bridges blow up and They've seen whatever you're going to do. They've probably seen it 10 times. So to make it work, there certainly is technique is involved, and you have to do your homework. But the audience has to identify with the characters. So if the action is good in the movie, it's a tribute to the acting, really.
Needless to say, the Boneyard most certainly recommends this movie for all fans of action cinema, but beware. It is a very violent movie with some nudity, and some of these characters are not nice people. That being said, it hurtles forward at breakneck pace, it's a great-looking movie, and it's dramatic as heck. If you are a fan of Walter Hill and John Milius, Extreme Prejudice is simply an essential watch. It's a film that embodies the spirit of the classic westerns while carving out its own place in genre movie history, a reminder of a time when action movies were driven by character, tension, masterful storytelling, and great ideas from a director. If you haven't revisited this movie in a while, there's no better time to rediscover this tough, I would say exhilarating gem from a master craftsman who had a clear, unique vision. He wore his influences on his sleeve, but to me, it's so original that Extreme Prejudice bows to no one.
I got a feeling the next time we run into each other, we're gonna have a killing. It's just a feeling.
Thanks for listening to my take on Walter Hill's Extreme Prejudice, a movie that I think deserves a lot more attention and is one of the criminally overlooked action movies of the 1980s. If you like this content, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more from me on masters of cinema such as Walter Hill. Make sure to check out the new store for new merch and clothing designs, and please consider joining me here on the Boneyard as a member or as a Patreon supporter. It's your contribution that keeps me digging up classics right here in the Boneyard and helps to free up my time to create more about the movies that we love. Take care, everyone, and as always, thank you all so much for listening.